Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Prose podcast, your go-to source for the art, the craft, and the business of publishing. I'm Tally Shamus, an agented writer and a literary intern.
And I'm Lauren Kahn, an author and literary agent. As former attorneys and book lovers, we're pulling back the curtain on an industry known for being opaque.
And today we are thrilled to welcome Emily Everett onto the show. Emily is an editor and writer from Western Massachusetts. Her debut novel, All That Life Can Afford, is the Reese's Book Club pick for April 2025, out now from Putnam Books. She is managing editor at The Common Literary Magazine and a Massachusetts Cultural Council Fellow in Fiction. Emily studied English and music at Smith College and studied abroad for a year at University College London. After graduating, she returned to London to do an MA in Literature at Queen Mary University of London. She lived and worked in the UK from 2009 to 2013. Her work has appeared in the New York Times Modern Love column, the Kenyon Review, Electric Literature, Tin House, and Mississippi Review. Her short story, Solitaria, was selected as a runner-up for the Kenyon Review's 2019 Short Fiction Contest. Her work has been selected for Best Small Fictions 2020 and supported by the Vermont Studio Center.
Emily, thank you so much for joining us today. We are so excited to talk to you. You are our first Reese's Book Club pick on the show. Yay!
Wow, I'm honored.
We are too. I've been dying to talk to you because when I was extremely pregnant last year, I read All That Life Can Afford, and it took me places that I needed to go when I was homebound on my couch. So we're on the show. We like to get like nitty gritty into the publishing journey, and we would just love for you to take us back. Tell us how you began writing and what led you to this book that it really I think about all the time.
Oh, that's so nice. Yeah, it's funny that you said that it was sort of when you were homebound, because I feel like the idea also came to me when I was homebound, which was just because of COVID. It was sort of like late COVID, so it was like we still had to like do things and be functional and go to work and stuff, but we weren't traveling yet, and I was missing traveling so much, and just thinking about, there's an element of reading that can be escapist, and it's so much fun. Like, it's not like every book you read needs to take you somewhere you've never been or take you away from your regular life, but there is something really special about those books that can take you away. And I think I had the idea to write about London mostly because I really missed London, because I lived there for about 4 or 5 years, and I loved it so much, missed it so much. It was my early 20s, which is just like such a romantic time. Like, I mean, could barely pay my rent, but it just felt romantic to be someone in their early 20s figuring out the world in London. And I was sort of nostalgic about that time. And obviously the pandemic was just a time where we weren't doing much that was romantic. We weren't going places. We weren't sort of having these grand experiences, grand romances, and that kind of thing. So that was sort of what drew me to the idea. And as soon as I started to think about writing about London, I also thought about something else I really like to write about and think about, which is class and money and finances and that kind of thing, which I feel like is starting to be written about more, but it's just like not something you see in a lot of books these days. Mm-hmm. And I knew that England is a place where they're much more open to talk about class and to acknowledge sort of the difficulties and the divides that come with privilege or money or family wealth, that kind of thing. But the real germ of it was an article I read in the New York Times about Smith College, which is my alma mater and is in the town where I live now in Northampton, Massachusetts. And when I went there, I was very much like a working class kid, like basically on full scholarship, washing dishes in the dining halls. I used to work in the dorms I used to clean the dorms, like clean the houses. So I felt like all the students were having sort of this one experience of Smith, and I was having kind of a different experience of Smith. And this New York Times article sort of acknowledged that, and it reminded me of something, which is that when I was at Smith, at least in the beginning, I felt like I had a lot more in common with the staff there who were working in the dining halls or cleaning the houses than I did with some of the other students. Not all, there are plenty of scholarship students at Smith, but so I sort of like was putting those ideas together, like that feeling of being an outsider, and examining the idea of whether a character, like if a main character really cared about those things, if she was really embarrassed about her background, or if she minded being working class when everyone else wasn't, what would that experience be like for her? Because I think when I went to Smith and when I lived in London and tutored for very wealthy families and was sort of around all this wealth but not experiencing it. I didn't really feel bad about it. I was just sort of like in my adventure times, like just experiencing it. And but that's not a very interesting book. Like a book is when someone is really struggling with something or trying to figure out how to work through something. And a friend of mine always says that her main characters are always just like her without therapy. And I feel like that's like a little bit of what Anna is like, what if I hadn't had an amazing family to sort of ground me through that experience? Like, what if I had been someone who set a lot of stock in fitting in or, sort of like remaking yourself? And so it was sort of a thought experiment in that. But it was really just like the seed of it was like, I miss London. I couldn't go to London because it was COVID. And so I was just like putting those ideas together. But I very much hoped that it would be a book that would be fun and escapist. And so you wouldn't notice that it was also telling you all these really kind of intense things about class and privilege and also about like grief. There's a lot of grief in the book, family stuff, and just sort of like slip that stuff in under the radar with all the fun and the romance and the champagne.
I would love to dig into that, actually. How do you get across those big messages without being didactic, without your reader feeling like, okay, no, this is being pushed at me. I want to have a good time. Not for me.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one thing that helps is I don't really think of them as messages. Like I sort of sat down and was like, when you write a book, you do want it to be about something. And ideally those things shouldn't just be super personal. They should also be sort of societal or universal in some way. But I wasn't trying to teach people a lesson about what it feels like to be poor or anything like that. I feel like that would be sort of dull. But I did just want to, I think we all just want to be kind of seen and like have our experience represented in literature or in movies or something like that. And my experience very much was, being someone who was really broke, but was constantly sort of amongst the sort of wealthy elite in London or people who, grew up having no money. They didn't need to worry about money at all and how different their lives were just on a daily basis. And I knew so much of that experience that I knew that I could find sort of subtle ways of slipping it in as opposed to like, I don't know. I'm trying to think of something really ridiculous, but like, there's sort of like Gossip Girl moments where the kids from Brooklyn are like, it's like their lives are completely different than the kids in Manhattan. And it's like, that's not really true. Like pretty much their lives are very similar. They just like go on different vacations or something like that. And when I lived in London, I had lots of friends who were from really privileged backgrounds. And it just meant that, if they went on vacation, they went to different places. We all went to the same bars and restaurants, like it wasn't that different. And so I knew that I could sort of get into that nuance space, which is much more interesting than, originally thinking about maybe the rich characters as caricatures or sort of cartoony British, lords or something like that. And I just, anytime your characters become sort of ideas and not people, it's just, that becomes so boring. And so I kind of knew right from the start that wouldn't be very interesting. But I think I really just let the character lead, just really thought about like what a character like that would be thinking. And that she wouldn't be thinking big thoughts like resenting people for having more money than her. She would be thinking about, for example, the fact that like her mother died young because she had to ration her insulin because they didn't have enough money or good health insurance. And that's something that really happens in the US. But I was like, what would someone at a Michelin star restaurant be feeling about the price on the bill if they know that their mother couldn't afford all the medical care they needed? And I just like, when you get those moments bumping up against each other, that's going to always feel more interesting. And it's also going to be more powerful. Like the message is going to get across more than if you just tried to message it. So I think that's why I tried to do. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, well, you did it brilliantly in a way where the reader is still being propelled on this gorgeous adventure to London, traveling around Europe. So when you have this germ of an idea, what was your next step? Did you plot it out or did you pants it?
Yeah, I'm a big plotter. I need like a full outline. I will say with my new book, the full outline isn't doing me as many favors as I remember it doing. But all that life can afford, I had sort of these key moments very early on. I wanted her to have a trip to Lisbon as sort of like this like really amp up her fish out of water experience by going on a trip with these wealthy people. And I love Lisbon, so I also just like wanted her to go to Lisbon so I could write about Lisbon. And then I also knew, I won't spoil anything, but that there's sort of like a big reveal moment at a party. And I had that moment and sort of this idea of her having sort of hidden parts of herself or be sort of, she borrows clothes from like someone else's closet without permission, and it sort of becomes like a secret that might be discovered. And I had that idea very early. And once I had those things, I think I just kind of built the plot around getting her there. And I also, I mean, I'm very, like I use 3-act story structure. Like I very much feel like, you know, you're sort of ramping up to something big happens at the midpoint, and then things get better for a little while, and then everything goes terribly, and then you have to resolve it. And I feel like that's like the shape of books when I write them. And so I had that in mind, and I put together sort of the characters, the idea for sort of, I mean, I don't really think of it as a love triangle, but I suppose there's a love triangle in the book, and that's a little bit of a reference to Pride and Prejudice. And I had that idea, I think, fairly early on, especially because I really wanted to do this, like really, my favorite moment in Pride and Prejudice is when Elizabeth Bennet figures out that Mr. Darcy has been like working on her behalf secretly, like trying to help her and her family behind the scenes. And at that moment, I just feel like it's the best dramatic irony in the world. And I really wanted that moment. So I sort of was like, what, you know, how would Anna, how could Callum be working behind the scenes to help Anna? How would that fit into this love triangle? And those kind of gave me the plot points to start with. But I really need an outline to work. Like I feel like I don't have a lot of faith in just winging it. I do think now that I have, you know, written a lot of stuff, I feel like, you know, you would get there eventually if you were winging it. But I really need to feel like I know what I'm working towards, and not like towards the end, but like I need to know like I'm writing towards the next kiss, or I'm writing towards the next disaster, or the next trip, or the next, you know, big switch or something like that. I think I need to feel those things coming so that I can sort of start heading us in that direction. And of course, then, you know, you outline it, you write the novel, and then you change everything. But I don't think I could sit down and write it without the outline. Yeah.
I love that approach, because those scenes that you're referencing are so cinematic, like the party scene, like talk about just like a buildup of all this chaos and all this tension, and it just kind of explodes off the page. So having that in mind and then building towards it is, yeah, that's a brilliant idea.
Well, and it just helps you, like, you know, you got to like, one of the things that makes things so satisfying is when you feel like they were breadcrumbed, like when you feel like there were like little hints that they were coming, or little moments that lead up to them. And obviously you can go back and put those in later. And there are plenty that I did have to go back and put in later. But I think if you know what you're working towards, you have that awareness in your head while you're writing the first chapter and the second chapter. And you can sort of like lay some of those breadcrumbs for that make it more satisfying when it does happen.
Totally. Yeah. And it's genre, it's universal across genres, because this is definitely not a thriller, but I had that feeling in that party scene where you're like, oh God, like what is about to happen? You're just like on the edge of your seat. So yeah, well done.
I'm so glad.
Yeah. And you mentioned having written a lot. So how many manuscripts had you written prior to getting agented? And our listeners are generally querying writers for the most part. So can you talk a little bit about how you got your agent and that process?
Yeah, absolutely. It took me a long time to start writing novels, to like admit to myself that that's what I wanted to do, and that I was like allowed to do that. It sounds so silly now to me, because it's clearly I'm much better at writing novels than I am at writing short stories. But I feel like I sort of came into the writing world a little bit. I mean, I don't know if this is late, but I was probably like 30 when I was kind of coming into the writing world. I work as the managing editor at a literary magazine. And so my exposure to writing was, you know, sort of a few little classes here or there, like online or that kind of thing. And then coming into the literary world, where at that time it felt like everyone had an MFA in writing. And I very much felt like everyone else had gone to MFA programs and they had gotten all these tools about how to write a novel, and that they had them and I didn't, and I would need to work for years to get what I needed to write a successful novel. And I now know that's not true at all, and that like MFA programs are mostly geared towards writing short stories, and I'm not sure there are any tools that you really need to write a novel, or any tools that anyone can teach you, at least, that you need to write a novel. But it really held me back for a long time, and so I spent a long time trying to work on short stories and get short stories published. And I mean, I don't know if that was strategic. I think it was just sort of what the people around me were doing. You know, my peers were sort of publishing stories, and the writers I knew, maybe they were working on a novel, but mostly they were focusing on getting published in good magazines and that kind of thing. And I think because I was in the magazine world, I was pretty focused on that. And so it took me a really long time to open up to the idea of writing a novel, even though I didn't know how, which, again, this all seems so silly to me now, because I know working on a novel now, it's like, just because you wrote one doesn't mean you know how to write the next one. Like, nobody knows how it works. Like, everyone is different. But I really felt like I needed like permission to start. And I don't know if there was like a specific moment, but I did eventually, like when I got an idea that I felt like would sustain me for long enough. I think for me, like a lot of what I need to work on a novel is to really fall in love with the idea and have a lot of faith in the concept, because I'm sure you know that like the day-to-day writing is not always going to go good. Like, you're not always going to be happy with what you wrote. You're not always going to be happy with the part of the novel you're in or how the characters are coming together and stuff like that. But if you always have faith in the idea, like the concept, like people want to read a book about a poor girl living in London among the rich. Like, if you have faith in the idea, then I think that can keep you going through a lot of the sort of drudgery of actually writing it. And so I really like committed to that idea and spending time there. And I was very lucky in that my querying journey was I won't say it was easy. I worked very hard at it, but because I had published a few short stories in good literary magazines, when it came time to query my manuscript, I already had a few agents who had reached out to me. So I was just like, if we're going back to like the nitty gritty for people who are thinking about querying, like, you should have a website where people can contact you. Like, I had a story that was coming out. I found out that I'm not good at writing short stories, but I am okay at flash fiction. And so I published sort of within the space of like a couple months, having absolutely failed at publishing anything, published 2 flash fictions, one in Electric Lit, which is read, just very widely read. They sent flash fiction through Electric Literature. They send it out as an email to their whole list. And so I got some notice from that. And my friend was like, if you have a piece coming out, you need to have a website so agents can contact you. And she was right. And so I put on my website that I was working on a novel. And so when I did hear from a couple agents that they liked my stories, they would be like, tell me about your novel. Like, where are you at with it? And some of them were very eager to see it, but I had sort of absorbed wisdom online that you should not send partials to agents. Like, you should wait until you are so done with this book and it is so perfect, and then you should send it to them. And so I made myself wait. And even though I had heard from some agents, I spent, I finished the novel. It was way too long. I spent a long time cutting it to like a length that I knew was like industry acceptable, like it was still too long. But I cut it, I think that so much about querying is showing the people you're querying that you're professional, that writing isn't just your like hobby, or something you do now that you've retired from being a doctor or a lawyer or something like that. And I think having a professional query letter, having your manuscript be the right length for the genre, having those words in your query letter that let the agent know that you understand the industry and what they're trying to sell, as opposed to just like what your project is. Those things just signal to the agent that you are also a professional that they can work with. And so, I even though I had agents asking me to see the manuscript, I took like an online class about how to write a great query letter that sort of shows you're part of the industry, like not a query letter that's a plot summary, but a query letter that talks about like where your book fits in the market and what tropes it has. Because I think when you're writing a book, you're like, my book is unique. And then once you're trying to sell it, you need to say, my book is like other books. And so I did all that. Yeah. So I put together a very professional query letter, even though I was querying people who had already emailed me to ask about the novel. And then things happened very quickly for me. Like, I heard back from one agent like basically the same day, which was very nice. We're still in touch. She's wonderful. We didn't end up working together, but I'm sure you all know this, but for the listeners, I'll just say that like when you hear back from one agent, you get to nudge all the other agents you sent your manuscript to, and you tell them, hey, I have an offer of representation, but I'd still love to hear from you. Like, could you let me know? And it gives them basically 2 weeks to read. And, someone had to tell me this. This isn't like information that I just like had in my brain. But once I did that, that makes I think the truth is that it makes the other agents more interested in reading it once they know that you have an offer. Mm-hmm. And so then I had a few offers, and I ended up going with an author an agent who is the agent of a friend of mine. And I had asked her to connect us. So the agent I eventually went with wasn't even one who had reached out to me, but I had asked a friend to connect us. Because I knew she was a very businessy agent, and I really wanted a businessy agent. Like, I didn't need a best friend agent. I didn't need a really editorial, like, line edits agent. I didn't need someone to go out for drinks with. Like, I needed someone who was really going to take care of the business side of things. And my agent is absolutely that person. She's like a big, scary, like, New York agent shark. and I love her so much. So yeah, I ended up going with her, and then she gave me some edits, and then we went to market like very quickly. Yeah.
Wow.
Wow.
And
That is the advice that you just gave. I hope listeners listen to on repeat.
I'm sorry
The
it was
way
so
you-
long.
No,
No,
oh my
that was
God. It
amazing.
was actually a perfect summary. I've tried, and Tolly's tried. We've tried like expressing this on this podcast so many times. And the way you summarize that about how to show that writing is not your hobby and to
Yeah.
be so professional that even though these agents were reaching out to you, I'm sure it was so tempting just to be like, and attach, and please see attached, and
Here's
have a
my
great
first
day.
draft.
Yeah, exactly. Enjoy the fact that you even took a class and learned how to write a query letter, and they were the ones emailing you, I think sets you apart so much. I can't even tell you, because we're both agents, so we see query letters, and I can tell immediately whether someone's professional or not. And the way you just summarized that effort that goes in, it does pay off. It really does. So thank you so much for walking us through that, because that, incredible.
Yeah, I've been thinking about it a lot lately. Like, I feel like I've just been hearing a lot of people talk about their agent experiences. And like, I recently got on TikTok, and so much of the TikTok I'm on is like querying and getting an agent and stuff like that. And I'm like, I actually think I do have some advice for this.
Yeah. And you mentioned that your agent is very business forward. So what does that mean for our listeners? What skills do you appreciate most in your agent?
It's a good question. I'm trying to think like what I can tell you without telling you too much. There's a lot of behind the scenes that agents do. I mean, so much of it, I don't need to tell you guys, but for the listeners, like a lot of what agents do is like having lunches with editors just to keep a great rapport so that when they have a book to recommend, the editor actually trusts their judgment or something like that. There's a notorious agent on the scene who I won't name who just represents anything and just sends it out into the world. And so I'm sure that editors do not value manuscripts that he sends to them because there's no selection process behind it. Like the point of an agent is to say, I'm someone with taste who understands the market, and I think this works. Like, do you think this works? And I feel like I knew, I mean, and just to be very honest about it, like she had represented a lot of big clients. She's at CAA. I should say her name is Molly Glick. She's the best. If you can work with her, work with her. But she's at CAA. And so I feel like she's done a lot of, like when a celebrity has a memoir, if they're film agents at CAA, then they're going to end up selling their memoir or whatever through CAA. And so she's represented a lot of that. She did like Kamala Harris's memoir, like the Facebook whistleblower memoir, And so I just knew that she would have kind of clout. And I don't mean that in any sort of like tasteless way, but I think, you just want to be professional. You want to be like taken seriously. And I feel like I knew that she would be taken seriously wherever she went with my manuscript. And I had also talked to, the friend who I had talked to had mentioned to me that her agent had said to her, I really love this sex scene in your book, but if you can tone it down a little bit, then this book can be taught in college courses. And I was just like, it just blew my mind. I was like, are agents giving advice like that? And some of them are. It's not something I ever would have thought of, and I don't think anyone is teaching my book in college courses. But I was like, okay, this is an agent who's like thinking about sales, thinking about deals, and not, the way that everyone around me was thinking about books, which is like art project, passion project, life goal, like this sort of woo-woo way that we writers think about novels, I think, in the beginning. And I'm a little, not mercenary, like it's not about money for me, but I have always been very practical. Like if I thought no one wanted to read my novel, I wouldn't write it. Like I'm writing it for people to read it. And I think maybe that comes from working in literary magazines where like we publish incredible work and very few people read it. And so I think I've always been very practical, and I wanted an agent who would do those things. I think on the logistical side, I'll just say like, there's some things that agents do behind the scenes to make sure that things go to auction as opposed to just having like one or two editors interested in it. But she did some really good putting together meetings and stuff like that and getting my book in front of people who she knew would like it. And then another thing she did, she asked them to put something in my contract that said that if I earned out my advance within a year, I would get a bonus as a way to sort of be like, look, I know you can't give us more money up front, but like if this works out, like is there something there? And she put that in, and that's on my next contract as well. And I actually did just find out I just earned out last week. So
Amazing! Congratulations!
Amazing.
I'm so proud, not even because of the money. I'm just like so proud. I really wanted to be like a good bet for my publisher. Like it feels really good that like the money they bet on me has come back to all of us. Feels great. Yeah.
That's incredible.
Yeah. And I'm actually so glad you brought that up because I tell clients, I'm going to be submitting to some of these imprints. And I think sometimes they're a little disappointed. Like, I thought we were only subbing to like these, just, these 5 massive ones.
The big ones. Yeah.
And I say, exactly. And I'm like, you know what? The reason though is because an offer is an offer. And when you get an offer, I get to go back to them and I say, you just got an offer. And I'm actually in the middle of this right now. I have a client go into acquisitions. And so I got to go back to everybody who I haven't heard from in months and say, hey, we're going to acquisitions. You might want to start reading. And all of a sudden, these people who I have not heard from are like, I will pick up the pace. I'm reading over the weekend. Yeah. And so that's, that is exciting. And it's very similar to the agenting thing. There's something about this industry. Like when you get that, I just got an offer, all of a sudden agents are interested in you. So I would love to know, how long was your editing process with your agent? And then what was your submission and auction process like the timeline?
I'm thinking I worked with my agent. We got together in July, and then publishing shuts down in August, and so she gave me both line edits and some like larger structural edits, and I worked on them over August, and then she was happy with them, and so we went on submission in September. It was very quick. I did a ton of edits with my editor once the book sold. Like we probably did like 6 months of edits, and that I think is. I assume is pretty standard, but I feel like the bigger changes came once I had an editor and that my agent and I didn't do a lot. But I also think that's because, as I said, I literally spent a year revising the book after it was done before I sent it to agents. I knew, knowing that it was much too long for the industry standards gave me like a structure for revising. And so I knew I needed to tighten everything, which is just like, honestly, what everyone should do. Even if you think your book is not too long for industry standards, you should still cut it. So it really gave me like a structure for revising because I knew I needed to get to a certain word count. And then of course, while you're making those cuts, you're seeing things that should come together better. You're seeing like ways you can rearrange things. Yeah. So I think that some of the way that things went quickly for me is because I spent a year revising on my own before I went to an agent or an editor. Yeah.
And do you remember what that word count was? Because
I was just going to ask that.
I get some very long manuscripts in my inbox. And so if anyone's listening, this might help them.
I've been talking with friends about this. I mean, what I've always heard is that like historical fiction or like more sci-fi saga kind of stuff can get up to 120,000 words. Mm-hmm. And there are certainly, there are many literary novels that we all read that are 120,000 words and we don't feel the length at all. But I'm not sure that's how you want to go with a debut. If you're just an unnamed debut author going to an agent, I'm not sure you want to show up with 120,000 word literary manuscript. I'm sure you guys can agree or disagree. I hate, you hate to acknowledge that it is like this, but there are so many people trying to sell their first novel and trying to query their first novel. And you don't want to like have to tweak all the circumstances, but you have to tweak all the circumstances. Like you have to make sure it sounds good. So I think when I turned mine in, I don't think I had gotten it to 120,000 words, but I had got it to 120 something. And wow. I really hesitate to tell you how long it originally was. It was terrible.
I really want to know how long it originally was. Now, what was it? 160?
Oh, it was worse than that. It was like, it was really like, it was 200. Very, it was very, it wasn't a first draft, but it was like the novel you expect someone to write when they're figuring out how to write a first novel, like very meandering, really working up really slowly to big events. And then, now I know that you can really just like go right in there. Yeah. But yeah, so let's see, what was I talking about? Industry standards. Yeah. So I just wanted to get it to a length that wouldn't like give an agent a heart attack when they saw it in the query letter, basically. And I was like, I think that if I can do that, then once they read it, they'll be like, okay, this is really good. I'm sure we can edit it. Like, I'm sure they would see where to edit it down. Right. And I really did just, I made big structural edits, taking out whole chapters, whole sections, whole characters. But the other thing I was just coaching a friend through doing is what one agent referred to as a scalpel edit, which is like really like literally, can you reword this sentence to use fewer words? And so I think like in my last couple rounds, I was like, can I I need to get this book 10,000 words shorter. How many words do I have to remove each chapter to do that, and go through and try to like cut 200 words from each chapter or something like that? Or if a chapter is 2,200 words, can you get it to 2,000? You know, like that, just really like very nitpicky line edit chopping. And I think that is kind of how I got there in the end. And I think when I hear people talk about All That Life Can Afford now as like sort of a plotty, pacey novel, I'm like, that's because it was this long and I got all that plot into this. Like,
wow.
Like that's why it feels like it moves like that. Yeah.
Oh, I love that. Tightening gets me very excited. I love the act of tightening. That's like my favorite step of revisions.
Let me just tell you a story from another podcast. There's a podcast called Working It Out with Mike Birbiglia, who's a comedian.
Oh yeah, I've seen him at the Comedy Cellar. Yeah,
he's wonderful. Yeah, but he and I think I'm understanding like there are a lot of comics who think of themselves really as writers. You know, like what they're doing is writing.
Yeah.
And on his podcast, it was like a pandemic podcast. You know, and he has other comedians or sometimes even like comedic actors. On the podcast, and they talk about their writing process and their process for comedy. And I think if I'm listening to like a writing podcast, sometimes it feels like homework or it feels like too close to what I actually do.
Yeah.
But because they're comedians, it feels a little different. And he had Frank Oz on his podcast. Frank Oz, who is the voice of Miss Piggy, but is also a very celebrated director. And Frank Oz was talking about how whenever he would make a movie, he would make a cut of the movie that was like 20 minutes or half an hour too long, and he would screen that. And universally, everyone would think it was terrible. But he was doing it so he could like get different reactions to different scenes and stuff like that. It was part of his process. And he would talk about how like everyone watched it was like, this is terrible. And even his own wife, he screened her like 12 Angry Men, which is like a very celebrated movie. And his wife was like, I don't know what you're going to do. It's a disaster. Like it doesn't work at all. And he knew that all he needed to do was cut 20 minutes to half an hour. And then it's a perfect movie. And it was like, I heard this podcast when I was walking around my neighborhood having like a crisis of faith in my novel, and I was like, you know, he's right. Like it probably all the bones are there, and if you just get it to the right length where everything kind of falls together, like then the problem will be solved. You don't have to solve it in some large existential way. You can just kind of keep cutting towards it. And it was like, you know, it just like came down from heaven at the exact moment I needed to hear it, and it sort of gave me the faith I needed to keep working. And now I always think of that. Like I'm working on a first draft right now, which is not going great. Like I can tell it's not great, but I know that once I finish this bad first draft and start cutting and start rearranging and stuff, like the shape of it will emerge. And I have like that faith, I think, because that is usually how it has worked. Yeah.
Oh, I got chilled. I love that so much. I'm just a huge proponent of just like cranking it out, that first draft, and then we go back.
Yeah, but I'll just tell people that I'm not a good storyteller, so you should go listen to the Working It Out podcast with Mike Birbiglia and listen to the Frank Oz episode, and it will change your life much more than hearing me talk about it.
Wow,
well, you are a great storyteller, but we also will go listen to that.
That is very true.
If you want to know what it's like to be my friend, being my friend is hearing me talk about things I heard on podcasts. Like, that's all. That's all. My whole thing is things I heard on podcasts. Yeah.
That's us too.
That's so true. I wanted to ask you this when we were talking about, you know, offers and going out on submission and whatnot. So sometimes you will submit to an imprint that it might not be your first choice, but you'll do that strategically. Now, the risk with that is that if you do submit to that imprint, you get an offer and you don't get an offer from anyone else that you want, then you're kind of stuck. You know, you have to either accept that or not and write a new manuscript. So I'm curious how much say you had in terms of the strategy, especially with an agent who is, you know, as experienced and knowledgeable as Molly. How much did you have in terms of input? Like, oh no, I don't like this imprint. How about this editor? Oh, I found this editor.
Yeah, I mean, the truth is that I really left it very much up to her. I think she did give me a list of who she was submitting to originally, and I think what she probably did was add people on without bothering me about the details. You know, sort of as we went. Probably she got a few no's and then was like, who else can we add onto this list? You know, like I think that's probably pretty standard. And the only thing I did is I told her like the imprints that I really love. So obviously like my book is like sort of book club, like upmarket literary fiction. And so I feel like the places that are doing that so great are Riverhead and Flatiron. And so I was like, I just wanted to make sure those were on the list. And I completely trusted her to know who at those imprints would be the right person to send to and that kind of thing. And then I was not one of those people who like wanted to check in and hear how things were going. I was like, tell me when I have a meeting, like I do not want to know when the no's are coming in. I don't want the feedback on the no's. I don't want to, I still don't read reviews. Like I don't need any more negativity up in here. So I really just kind of trusted her to do all of that wheeling and dealing. And she seemed immediately to know what to do with it. And I knew she had sold so many books before that were sort of in this upmarket space. So I was just sort of like, let her go do it.
Yeah. Incredible.
And then do you remember the timeline? Like, was it like you subbed on X day and then when you got your first offer?
I think I had my first meeting maybe like 5 days into querying. And then I think...
Oh, amazing.
I think we sold in 2 weeks. Everyone's going to hate me.
Wow. No.
I think most of that is down to Molly. I just feel like she's such a heavy hitter that like people really listen to her and they know she's not going to wait on them. They know she's not going to like, let them take another week to look at it. Like they just know not to do that with her. Yeah. But I also, my whole experience of the process is just sort of through the things that she tells me. So I don't know all the behind the scenes stuff, but
it's incredible. All right. And now I'm dying to ask, when did you hear about Reese? And tell us about hearing about that call. Because I've seen this story on TikTok and I'm like, I cannot wait to talk to her about this.
Yeah, it was amazing. It was just the setup of it is even funnier because I had, you have like an early marketing meeting with your publication team and you're like, wow, they're really going to go to bat for my book. And then, things start happening and you start seeing like the most anticipated list and you're not on it. And you start seeing like, early publicity stuff and you're like, I'm not getting that early publicity that this other book that's coming out the same month as mine. You just start to kind of try to read the tea leaves and see whether your book is going to be successful or not. And I was starting to feel like we weren't getting a lot and that I also knew my book was coming out in the spring of 2025, which was when 1 million books were coming out because nobody wanted to publish during the election in the fall of 2024. And so I felt like there were so many books coming out. And so I had sort of been slowly coming to terms with the fact that my book would come out and I would be proud of it and my friends and family would read it, but that it wouldn't be like some huge, bestseller or anything. And it's not like I ever thought it would be on the bestseller list. I never even, really imagined that, but you do hope you get a little press or some reviews or something like that. And I was starting to feel like that might not happen. And I had a call in December with the publicity manager from my imprint, who's amazing, Katie. And we were talking about like essays to write to place around the time. And she was saying, she basically told me that she felt like we would have heard by now if it was going to be any like book club picks. Because a lot of them pick like, a year in advance, like super far in advance. And so she was basically letting me down gently and being like, we probably would have heard by now if it was going to be any of these like big book club picks. And that was at the end of December, we had that call. And then the first week of January, I went on vacation with my sister and brother-in-law and my friend Steve. And we went to Aruba and, again, I was just like, sort of like, that pre-pub time is just like a tender time. You have like lots of hopes, but you're trying to keep your hopes low. And sometimes you're disappointed, but you're trying not to feel that, it's just a weird time. And so I was in Aruba and I got an email from my editor that she had some good news and could she call me? And I had been like snorkeling all morning. It had been a very nice day and we were going to hang out by the pool and get lunch and just, read books by the pool basically. And then I told her she could call me and I thought that she might tell me that it might be a book of the month pick, which was something I was like really crossing my fingers with. I've had so many friends who had books that were book of the month picks and I felt like it felt slightly more attainable to me than Reese's book club. And so then I told her she could call me. And when she called, she was like, your book is going to be a big book club pick. And I was like, what? Like, really? And she said, it's going to be Reese Witherspoon book club pick. And I just like couldn't process it. And so I sort of argued with her and I was like, no, like Katie told me we would have heard by now. Like it's much too late. And my editor said, Reese does whatever she wants. And I was like, oh, I guess she can. And then, meanwhile, I know you're supposed to keep it a big secret, but my sister, who's like, she's basically my brainstorming partner, my twin sister, and my brother-in-law, my friend Steve, are sitting next to me in pool loungers. We're literally at the pool, and they're sitting right next to me, and they're like, "What is it? What is it? What is it?" And so I just look over to them and I go, "It's Reese." And they just are like, everyone is freaking out and crying. Like people must have thought, I don't know what people thought at the pool. We were losing our minds. And then, we had to finish talking about all the logistics of this. And so it's like, they took photos of me getting the news. And so there's like a photo of me kind of laughing and being happy. And then a photo of me being like confused. And then a photo of me just like crying, like sunscreen in my eyes. Like,
Oh my God. I'm crying. I have tears.
I
love that
emotional
so much.
I haven't told that story in a while. Yeah, it just felt like, it was really the first time that like someone who wasn't like a friend or family or someone who worked for my publisher had read the book and really got it. And I mean,
wow.
If they had called and told me that a nice reviewer had read it and got it, I would have been overjoyed. But to hear that like Reese Witherspoon, who I've heard reads like a book every 2 days, that she had connected with it was just like, I was like, this is going to mean that my book does find readers. And that was like the only anxiety I had ever had. I told you earlier that like, if I didn't think anyone would read my book, I probably wouldn't write it. And I feel like as soon as I heard it was going to be a Reese's Book Club pick, I was like, okay, people will read it. That's great. Like my work was not in vain. And I felt like it would probably solve a lot of the publicity problems that novels are having right now. No one's really writing reviews anymore. Like it's really just hard to move the needle at all on anything. And I knew that this is kind of like a silver bullet for doing that. And I mean, it didn't get me reviews. It didn't get me like, I thought you're going to get a New York Times review because you have a Reese's Book Club pick. And it's like, no, that does not happen. But I just knew it would solve that problem of trying to like move the needle in such a busy spring season where, thousands of books are coming out. And it also just kind of put me on this crazy path of promotion. Like I went to LA to film some stuff at the Hello Sunshine offices, and it gave me this big secret to keep, which was actually really fun. I've heard some people have to keep like Oprah and stuff. They'll pick their book club pick like a year and a half in advance, and then that person has to keep it a secret for a year and a half. I only had to keep it a secret for like 3 months, and it was still very hard.
Yeah, I can imagine. My goodness, that is so exciting, though. Congratulations again.
Thank you. Thanks. It's been very surreal, and I have to tell you the best part is that there's an amazing group chat of all the Reese's Book Club authors.
I've heard about that. That's so
It used
cool.
to be on Instagram. Now we're on Signal. And
Amazing.
I mean, Ann Patchett's not on it, which is like a real hardship for me. Like I just want to be on a group chat with Ann Patchett. But most of the other Reese's Book Club authors are in the group chat. And if you're a Reese's Book Club author and you're listening to this and you're not in the group chat, like hit us up because we want you in the group.
Get in there.
And it is just wonderful. It's like this place where we celebrate each other's pub days. Kate Quinn, who's a Reese's Book Club author, just hit the bestseller list. And everyone is in the chat just going crazy about it. But it's also where people talk about like the hardships or like someone asked me this interview question. I don't really know if I want to answer, like the tricky things or like we get to workshop each other's like cover options, which is so much fun. Or like titles, like workshopping title ideas. Oh, it is so much fun.
Wow. I will say, like, out of any community, I feel like I'm constantly seeing the Reese group in LA together at events. And then it's so cool too. I mean, so have you met Reese? Was that part of it?
I have been at an event with Reese, but I
Okay.
have not met her yet. Yeah.
But she read your book, so
Yes,
that's
yeah.
amazing.
Yeah, she like I saw a video where she was talking about my book and she said my name. So, but I do think eventually I will get to meet her because, like you say, there are these kind of like in-person events and stuff like that. But basically, the place where I went hoping to meet her was the Shine Away conference, which is this like weekend-long sort of women empowerment kind of really fun, like kind of influencer-y event in LA. And a bunch of the authors were going, and so I went, and I did get to do a signing, which was really fun. But it was literally the weekend that Reese and Harlan Coben were dropping their novel. And so I feel like there were book events, but it was like more focused on that book, which totally makes sense. And some of the authors happened to like be in the book club suite when she walked through, and so they got to meet her, but I was like down talking to, the other authors somewhere else, so I didn't get to meet her yet. But I'm sure it will happen, yeah. And the other thing I have to say is that her team is like absolutely incredible. Like, she has this whole team of people and their whole job is just book club. And it's like, how do I get that job?
Yeah, right.
Like, they host incredible events. They read all the books and like decide on the books together. Like the way they described it to me is that they all read kind of they read the best book picks and then decide together like what they think the pick should be. So it's not like a not a monarchy.
That is so cool. And does Hello Sunshine, are they working with you on any potential film? Or I don't even know if you could talk about that if they are, but
Yeah, I think there's like there's an assumption that if your book is a Reese's Book Club pick, then people say to me all the time that like they assume that Reese automatically gets the rights to make it, and that's not true. She definitely,
Okay.
I mean, definitely like the film agent at CA who was representing my book definitely asked them, but you know they're working on so many other things. I'm sure you've seen like some of these incredible, like Lucky coming out this year, like so many good
Yeah.
things coming out. And so I'm not working with them. I can't say more than that, but I don't think that's the end of the conversation.
Oh my God.
So exciting.
Okay. Well, you'll have to come back.
I will. I hope.
Okay, wait, no. So I have to ask you then, can you say who your dream cast would be?
Oh, that's so hard. I have really struggled with this because I'm turning 40 this year, and I feel like I do not know who the hot young actors are anymore.
I feel the same.
Like I don't know who they are. And so like when I was writing the book or when I was thinking about people who would be good for it, like I think about just my favorite actors and like I don't really think they're right for it, but like I'm obsessed with Florence Pugh. I think she's just like absolutely incredible.
Yes.
But I don't know who she would be in it. I think she's like, I don't know. She has too much integrity to play Faye, who's sort of like your frenemy villain. Someone said to me, my friend said to me that he thought Sophie Turner would be a really good Faye, which I think could be really interesting. Because she could be a really good bitch, I think.
I agree.
Yeah, I love her.
Like-
She's such a good actress.
And he's much too old, but I think that when I think of Callum, I kind of think of Theo James. Because he has just sort of this like such a tall, dark, and handsome man. He's got this crazy deep voice. Like he would,
Yes.
I think he could
Love
pull
him.
off that sort of like aloof Mr. Darcy thing without being like a jerk. But I'm sure he's too old to actually play those parts, you know, like.
Oh, what about Callum Turner? Have you seen
Is he the one who's
Eternity?
is he the one who's dating Dua Lipa?
He's engaged to Dua Lipa and he's British.
Okay. Oh, okay, yeah. Yeah. He's very handsome.
I'm
He could
sure
definitely do
my
that.
opinion matters so much. So go to your film agent.
Sure. Well, and I'm sure, you know, it's like these are the conversations that are fun to have, but it's like when they're actually making stuff, they're not worried about who's going to be in
Oh,
it,
yeah.
right? Yeah.
Yeah.
But
for
every
sure.
time I watch something now, I'm like, oh, that person could be good for this. Like, and I feel you know, like a lot of the Stranger Thing actors and actresses are sort of like
Yeah.
Yes.
kind of the right age. Although film stuff takes so long. It's like who on earth knows if when anything will happen. But
Yeah.
I love to watch stuff and be like, could this person be in it? You know?
Yeah.
It's very fun. Yeah.
That is so fun.
Oh, I love that. I love that. Well, yeah, we'll definitely be circling back. I mean, I told you your book is so cinematic, like that party scene, so cinematic. And when I read, I like see it as a movie. So very excited to come back to that. But I do need to ask you, book 2, you said you're writing a first draft. Can you tell us
Yeah.
anything?
Yeah. So I'm working with my same publisher and editor, which is amazing. You know, like I really wanted to do that. I have a lot of friends who don't really want to they want to write the book kind of independent of like anyone else. And it's like, I wanted to do it with my editor. She's so wise. She has such great advice and stuff. So I'm working on a novel about a recently widowed woman who has to start a farm wedding venue on her family farm, like basically to save the farm. But she hates weddings, obviously, like recently widowed, like has a lot of conflicted feelings about weddings, love, monogamy, all these things. And sort of, obviously there's like a big clash there. But yeah, I think it will be hopefully like All That Life Can Afford will be sort of fun and entertaining, but also have like a lot of heart and guts, I hope.
Wow, I love that. That actually reminds me so much. So my husband and I have been together for, 15 years at this point.
Wow.
But yeah, long time. We originally got engaged back when I was in law school, and we decided to push the wedding back. It was originally supposed to be in 2015, and we pushed it back because I was articling during this time. So I was living in a hotel that was connected by tunnel to my law firm. It was quite crazy. And this hotel had a historic vault. It used to be like a bank building. And so it had this vault in the basement, and they would host weddings all the time. And I had just pushed my wedding back. I didn't know what was happening. I was articling. I was miserable. And every day going to work, I had to pass this vault where either they were getting ready for a wedding or it's a weekend and I have to go into the office and they're actually having a wedding. I had to go down the stairs this one time, and the photographer was like, "Oh no, we're taking pictures here. You can't go down now." And I was like, "Well, this is my only way to get to work, so
Like, I live
I need
here.
to go down." I know. So that just reminds me so much of that. We're being kind of forced into this wedding industry when it's the last thing you want to be around. I love that. That is such juicy tension. Oh my goodness.
It is such a funny, weddings are so funny.
Yeah.
Because everything
Yeah.
has to seem perfect and looked perfect.
Yeah.
But it's so much work and energy and like agony to plan and
Yeah.
arrange and stuff. It's just such a
true.
bizarre thing. The thing that kind of sparked it for me is that I grew up on a farm, and there was this really old barn on the family farm that was torn down and rebuilt as a wedding venue at a much fancier farm, like a farm that is what my mother would have called gentleman farmers, like people who don't really need to farm to make money. They just like having a farm. And they're very nice people, but they tore down this barn that I had grown up playing in, working in. It had been, just like in the family for generations, and it became a wedding venue where people were getting married. And it just sort of like, for a lot of years, I felt very resentful about it. And I would see videos of weddings there. Like the weddings were so, $20,000 minimum, just for the venue. Yeah. And you see these drone videos. The drone comes over the field and goes into the barn, and it doesn't even look like a barn because it's so beautiful and there's no smells or anything. It was just so bizarre. And it wasn't really recognizable as this barn that I had grown up in. But when I had grown up in that barn, it was full of cobwebs and mice, and it was dirty and stinky. And, just like, it was such a disconnect. And I felt very resentful of it. And I have had a lot of thoughts over the years about what feels like, now we have trad wives, so I don't even have to explain this to you, but sort of like the fetishization of like traditional rural farm life as like some kind of easy, simpler way to live. And I think it's very ignorant of how actually very challenging and hard and how much of a struggle it is to actually do that kind of work and make a living doing that kind of work. But we love to sort of imagine it for a day, to have a farming wedding where like the mason jar centerpieces and stuff. And so I just really wanted to sort of like, that was sort of the impetus for it. Of course, the book is about so much more than that. It's much more about grief and marriage and like what it means to try to make something perfect when really deep down inside, like it can't be perfect, that kind of thing. But I think the impetus for it was these feelings of resentment I had about farm weddings in general.
And I think that books about weddings in general, so Lauren's writing a book about a wedding, and they're so fascinating because weddings, if you think about them, it's just such a strange concept. You're spending so much money, so much time, and it feels like the absolute most important thing in the world. Like your wedding, that's it. This is what your entire life has led up to. And the further away you get on the other side, I guess the sillier it all seems, but it's not. When you're in it, it's not. It feels so serious.
Yeah, and I do want to I think there's some feelings in the book about whether that's worth the money and that kind of thing. But I think for some people it really is, and I don't think that's bad or wrong or whatever. If you're not planning to have kids, if you're not planning to buy a house, maybe this is what you should be spending your money on. Go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just going to say that it's so interesting too. When I think back to my wedding, the welcome party of it all wasn't even for me. That was my dad's party. He was like, my friends are coming into town. I want to throw a party. And he just took it away and planned the menu. And I was like, this is the eldest daughter of it all, because I'm the oldest, was so fascinating to me. I was just like, this is your party. And we started calling it Ralph's party.
Amazing. I love it. Yeah, I think
that is so funny.
I also just reread The Wedding People, which I'm sure you read.
One of my favorite. Unreal.
I only read it for the first time, I think, last year or the year before, and I was just like, when a book is super hyped and you're like, I cannot believe this lives up to the hype. The book is so good. I cannot believe how it shouldn't work. The premise is crazy. It shouldn't work, and it's so well done, and I loved it so much, and the reread was even better. I think it really gets to the heart of not just sure, it's crazy to spend $1 million on a wedding, or have a week-long wedding is crazy, but it really gets to the heart of why the character feels that's important, and what she's trying to what demons she's trying to kind of exorcise by doing that. And I think that's just such smart writing. Yeah
So smart. Well, thank you for reminding me, because I've been meaning to reread that. And I remember when I first read the back copy, I was like, I don't know. I don't think this is for me. And I put it off. And then as soon as I started, I was like, I'm obsessed with this book. And I was like laughing out loud in bed, even though it's like dark. Like it's dark.
The first
humor.
chapter is a perfect chapter. It's
Perfect.
so fun. Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah. Now, that actually reminds me, I wanted to ask you books that you would recommend. And you had mentioned earlier in the podcast also, like you mentioned the 3-act structure. So I'm wondering fiction, but also are there any craft books that you particularly like?
I mean, the most logistical book that saved me, I don't think it helped me write my novel, but there's a book by Courtney Mom called Before and After the Book Deal. And it's probably almost 10 years old now, but I mean, I bought it years ago. And it has sort of a section for every phase of the publication process. So there's a whole section about querying. There's a whole section about like when you're on submission, and then there's a whole section about like how to share on social media without being a dick. Like, and then like it has a section about like when I got to the point where like my book had sold, but I needed to start asking for blurbs. There was a whole section about how to ask for blurbs. And then there was like a section about like, don't forget to write thank you notes to your publication team when the book comes out. And I was like, I never would have thought to do that. So that has sort of been my Bible, like through the whole process. And even though it's from 10 years ago, I feel like it's mostly still completely relevant. And that was sort of what got me through like the publication process itself. Let's see, I don't feel like I have like sort of picked up craft books. You know, you pick it up and you read a chapter or two and then you sort of put it down again. Not to go back to podcasts, but there's a screenwriting podcast called Script Notes with John August and Craig Mazin, two very successful Hollywood writers, but not like douchey Hollywood writers, like just like good solid story writers. And again, hearing them talk about screenplays and what makes screenplays work, what makes movies work, it is basically structure and plot, right? And what makes you care and that kind of thing. But it doesn't feel like I'm doing my homework by listening to it because it's about movies instead. And I feel like the way they talk about structure and stuff has been really illuminating for me. I think you've probably heard people talk about like the Pixar structure, you know, these ideas that you can take something that's really basic and you basically put it onto almost any story has been very helpful for me, I think. I also I feel like the book that gave me permission to write All That Life Can Afford is Writers and Lovers by Lily King, which is just a novel, a novel. And it's a coming of age novel, but the woman is in her late 20s or early 30s. And I just loved that it was sort of this book about like, you know, you're not a kid anymore, but you still are trying to figure out how you're going to do life and how you're going to make it work. And everything is such a mess. And then the ending is so satisfying and happy. I just like loved that book. And like during the pandemic, that book basically passed like the flu through my friend group. Like everyone who read it was like, you have to read this. And all my writer friends have read it. It's so satisfying. And it was recommended to me basically as like the Ted Lasso of books. Like there's some struggle in it, but it's just like very heartwarming and lovely. And I feel like after I read that, I was like, I think it will be okay for me to write this book that's just like about a woman figuring out her life in her 20s without a lot of money, which is, you know, I feel like is sort of what that book is doing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Lily King, please come on our show. Incredible.
I should say, like, I love all her books. She's an incredible writer, and I feel like she's a real chameleon. Like, she's written so many different kinds of books, but Writers and Lovers was like exactly the book I needed at exactly the right time.
Amazing.
I love that.
Awesome. Well, wow, this has been incredible. Thank you so much. I think it might be one of my favorite episodes, although I feel like we're starting to say that every time. I know. We've had so much fun. So thank you so much for your time. This is amazing.
Oh, thank you. This is so much fun. I have also done a lot of podcasts, but I think I can say this is one of my favorites. I really like talking about the logistics and the behind the scenes and stuff like that. I feel like it is becoming easier for writers to find the information they need about how to query, or, you know, that thing about nudging agents if you get an offer and that kind of thing. But it used to feel like really inside baseball, and you had to kind of know someone who would tell you how to do it. And I love that it's becoming a little more democratized. So thank you for doing that.
Yeah. Well, of course. I mean, partly the reason behind this show was that both of us would listen to authors talk about their books, and then that's it. And I'd be like, wait, can we rewind? Like, I want to know the process leading up to it. So thank you for giving us that. And come back anytime. When that movie deal is on the horizon. We need to come back and talk about it.
Yeah, I'll let you know when there's some news to announce. And
Thanks.
hopefully someday I will have another book come out and we can talk about it.
Yeah.
Definitely. Thank you so much, Emily.
And thank you all so much for tuning in. We hope you've enjoyed this episode, and remember to check back next Tuesday for a new episode of the Pros podcast.